It took just 6 months for the US-India ties to turn on its heels.
I'm thrilled to welcome the Prime Minister of India, my friend, Narendra Modi.
President Trump's leadership has been instrumental in nurturing India-US ties and making them vibrant.
The friendship between the United States and India is the strongest I believe it's ever been.
India has charged basically more tariffs than almost any other country. You know that, right? Over the years. But now I'm in charge, and you just can't do that.
It is not acceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing the oil from Russia.
What looks like differing foreign policy on the surface is actually much more complicated than that. In this episode of Grey Zone, we debunk 3 claims made by Donald Trump amid a trade war with India. First, India is financing Russia's war against Ukraine. Second, India's BRICS membership is anti-US. And third, India is the highest tariff nation in the world. I'm Ananya Dutta. Let's begin this episode of Grey Zone. When India became independent in the year 1947, it faced a world split into 2 camps, the US-led capitalist bloc and the Soviet-led communist bloc. New Delhi did not want to be dragged into someone else's war, so under its first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, it championed non-alignment, a foreign policy doctrine that promised friendship with all but alliances with none. Things changed after the 1962 war with China. Western powers like the US and Britain offered lukewarm support, while Pakistan drew closer to Washington and Beijing. The Soviets, on the other hand, stepped in, supplied weapons, vetoed UN resolutions against India, and backed it during the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War. India did not abandon its non-alignment policy, but it realized that its foreign policy has to evolve with the geopolitics around the world. So New Delhi came up with strategic autonomy. And one country that has respected India through thick and thin is Russia. It has weathered ideological differences, sanctions, and global conflicts. Today, when US President Donald Trump criticizes India's ties with Russia, he looks at only the last 3 years since the war in Ukraine started. He conveniently ignores the last decades. And this brings us to his first claim. Trump has said that India is financing Russia's war, and New Delhi doesn't care how many Ukrainians are killed.
What he said very clearly is that it is not acceptable for India to continue financing this war by purchasing the oil from Russia.
India has not supplied arms to Russia to be financing the war in Ukraine. However, Trump is right in saying that India's trade with Russia has surged in the last few years. Back in 2021, it used to be $8.25 billion. By the end of last year, the same figure was $65.7 billion. Crude oil has been the biggest driver in India's imports from Russia. New Delhi has become an economic superpower where the demand for gasoline is increasing much faster than any other country, and Russia is willing to give heavy discounts, unlike the Middle Eastern countries. So India's decision isn't political at all. It is purely commercial. But that's not the case with the Westerners. Since the beginning of the war, trade between the EU, European Union, and Russia has drastically contracted. But the bloc continues to buy oil, nickel, natural gas, fertilizers, iron, and steel from Russia. A similar story emerges from the US. Washington imported $1.27 billion worth of Russian fertilizers, $624 million worth of enriched uranium and plutonium, palladium used in tech and industrial sectors for $878 million. And all of this in the last year alone. Trump was asked about this. Take a look at his reaction.
India says that the US imports Russian uranium, chemicals, fertilizers, while criticizing their energy imports. Your response to that, sir?
I don't know anything about it. I'd have to check, but we'll get back to you on that. Yeah, please.
Second is BRICS. Trump has made it amply clear that he does not like the BRICS grouping. He has called it anti-US and an attack on the dollar.
And it's also BRICS. They have BRICS, which is basically a group of countries that are anti the United States, and India is a member of that, if you can believe it. And it's an attack on the dollar, and we're not going to let anybody attack the dollar. So it's partially BRICS, and it's partially the trade situation. It's the deficit. We had a tremendous deficit.
Trump's anger is misdirected to India for simply being a member of the BRICS, even though New Delhi is one of the loudest voices within the bloc that has explicitly warned against turning BRICS into an anti-West forum. While China and Russia promote de-dollarization, India realizes it is not a practical policy overall. So then one wonders, is Trump trying to get some kind of leverage by making these outlandish claims?
The outlook for the tariffs is that it's really more of a negotiating ploy. They want to get the other countries to sign an agreement. But knowing the president, even if those agreements are signed, if he changes his mind, he will push to do so.
Trump also claims that India is the highest or just about the highest tariff nation in the world.
Again, India was the highest or just about the highest tariff nation in the world, and one of the highest, 100 points, 150 points or percentages. So India was one of the highest in the world. They had won 175% and higher than that.
This is far, far away from the truth. India is not only not the highest tariff country, it's lower than most of the US's trading partners. The World Trade Organization puts the numbers clearly here. India's average applied tariff, the rate it actually charges, is about 15.9%. And its trade-weighted average, what's paid based on goods imported, is just 7.7%. Let me get you the figures of some of these developed countries that have steeper rates. For example, the US charges 350% on tobacco and 164% on peanuts. South Korea charges 50% for agricultural tariffs, and the EU charges 150% for sugar. And in the end, these tariffs end up hurting the consumers.
It'll mainly affect US trade, and it will increase the price on an average basis when these are fully implemented, and it takes time. But they will increase the average price of imports purchased by American, like probably around 15%. That's a pretty big increase, and that will show up in inflation later this year.
Trump might or might not drop this fight the moment he gets a deal he likes. But New Delhi has a long institutional memory, one shaped by decades of watching Washington's mood swings. If anything, Trump's rhetoric only reinforces the very doctrine he's rallying against: strategic autonomy. A policy that ensures India never puts all its eggs in one basket and sees old friendships, like the one with Russia, not as liabilities, but as insurance against exactly this kind of unpredictability. I'm Ananya Dutta, and you've been watching Grey Zone.